Readings of Almighty God's words on the pursuit of the truth.
What it means to pursue the truth, 14. There is another aspect to the moral statement of, do your best to faithfully handle whatever other people have entrusted to you that needs to be discerned. If the task entrusted to you doesn't consume too much of your time and energy and is within the range of your caliber, or if you have the right environment and conditions, then out of human conscience and reason, you can do some things for others to the best of your ability and meet their reasonable and appropriate demands. However, if the task entrusted to you takes up a significant amount of your time and energy, and takes away much of your time, to the extent that it makes you sacrifice your life, and your responsibilities and obligations in this life, and your duties as a created being will be reduced to nothing and will be replaced, then what will you do? You should refuse, because it is not your responsibility or obligation. As for the responsibilities and obligations of a person's life, other than taking care of parents and raising children, and fulfilling social responsibilities in society and under the framework of the law, the most important thing is that a person's energy and time and life should be spent on fulfilling the duty of a created being, rather than being entrusted with a task by anyone else, taking up their time and energy. This is because God creates a person, grants them life, and brings them into this world, and it is not for them to do things and fulfill responsibilities for others. What people should accept most is God's entrustment. Only God's entrustment is a genuine entrustment, and accepting man's entrustment is to not attend to their proper duties. No one is qualified to ask you to devote your loyalty, energy, time, or even your youth and entire life to the tasks they entrust to you. Only God is qualified to ask people to fulfill their duty as created beings. Why is that? If any task entrusted to you requires a significant amount of your time and energy, it will hinder you from fulfilling your duty as a created being, and even from following the right path in life. It will alter the direction and goals of your life. This is not a good thing. It's a curse. If it consumes a significant amount of your time and energy, and even robs you of your youth, depriving you of opportunities to gain the truth and life, then any entrustment of this nature comes from Satan, and not simply from any individual. This is another way to understand the matter. If someone entrusts you with a task that consumes and wastes a lot of your time and energy, and even causes you to sacrifice your youth and the entirety of your life, taking away the time you should spend fulfilling your duty as a created being, then that person is not only not your friend, they can even be considered your enemy and your foe. In your life, in addition to fulfilling your responsibilities and obligations toward your parents, children, and family that God has bestowed on you, all your time and energy should be dedicated and expended in fulfilling your duty as a created being. No one is qualified to occupy or take away your time and energy under the pretext of entrusting you to do anything. If you do not heed the advice and accept someone's entrustment, occupying a significant amount of your time and energy, then the time you have to fulfill your duty as a created being will be comparatively reduced, and even deprived and occupied. What does it mean if you are deprived of the time and energy to fulfill your duty? It means that your opportunity to pursue the truth is reduced. When the opportunity to pursue the truth is reduced, doesn't it also mean that your chances of being saved are smaller? Is this a blessing or a curse for you? It is undoubtedly a curse. It's like a girl who has a boyfriend, and the boyfriend tells her, "You can believe in God, but you must wait for me until I become successful, rich, and influential. And until I can buy you a car, a house, and a big diamond ring, then I will marry you." The girl says, "Then for these few years, I won't believe in God or perform my duties. First, I'll work hard with you and wait for you to get rich, become an executive, have your wishes fulfilled, and then I'll perform my duties." Is this girl smart or foolish? She's so foolish. You helped him achieve success, become rich and powerful, and have fame and fortune. But who will make up for the time you lost? You haven't fulfilled your duty as a created being. So who will make up for this loss? Who will repay it? For these few years of believing in God, you haven't gained the truth you should have, and you haven't gained the life you should have. Who will make up for this truth and this life? Some people believe in God but don't pursue the truth. Instead, they spend several years of their time to fulfill an entrusted task, wish, or demand from other people. In the end, they not only gain nothing, but also miss the opportunity to fulfill their duty to obtain the truth. They do not receive God's approval. The loss is too great, and the cost is too high. Isn't it so foolish to give up believing in God and fulfilling the duty of a created being just to avoid breaking the trust of others? To let people say good things about them, to be regarded as a person of high moral character, as reputable and trustworthy, and to successfully do their best to faithfully handle whatever other people have entrusted to them. There are also those who try to have it both ways, satisfying people on one side while allocating some energy to perform some duty, and pleasing others, but at the same time wanting to please God. What happens in the end? You may please people, but your duty as a created being is not fulfilled. You don't understand the truth at all, and you lose so much. Although you have done your best to faithfully handle things for people, received praise from them saying that you keep your word and are a person of high moral character, you have not gained the truth from God, nor have you received God's approval or acceptance. This is because doing your best to faithfully handle things for people is not what God requires for humanity, nor is it a task entrusted to you by God. Doing your best to faithfully handle things for people is off track. It is not attending to your proper duties, and it holds no value or significance whatsoever. It is not at all a good deed worth commemorating. You have invested a great deal of your energy and time to others, and by doing this, not only are you not remembered by God, you have lost the best opportunity to pursue the truth and the precious time to fulfill your duty as a created being. when you turn around and want to pursue the truth and perform your duties well, you are already old, lacking in energy, physical strength, and plagued by illnesses. Is it worth it? How can you expend yourself for God? Using the remaining time to pursue the truth and fulfill your duty as a created being is exhausting. Your physical strength can't keep up. Your memory deteriorates, and your energy isn't good. You often doze off during gatherings, and your body always has difficulties and ailments when you try to fulfill your duties. By then, you will regret it. By doing your best to faithfully handle whatever other people have entrusted to you, what have you gained? At most, you can bribe others and receive their compliments. But what is the use of people's praise? Can it represent God's approval? It doesn't represent it in the slightest. In that case, that sentence of praise from a person is worthless. Is it worth it to endure such great pain for the sake of receiving praise while losing the opportunity to be saved? So, what do people need to understand now? If anyone entrusts you with a task, no matter what it is, as long as it doesn't involve fulfilling your duty as a created being or something entrusted to you by God, you have the right to refuse because it is not your obligation, let alone your responsibility. Some people might say, if I refuse, others will say I have poor morals, or they will say I'm not a good enough friend or loyal enough. If you are concerned about this, then go ahead and do it, and afterward, see what the consequences are. There are also people who haven't finished doing things for others and can't continue to do things for others because they are performing their duties. They ponder, it's not good that I leave this task half finished. As a person, I should have credibility. One must do things from start to finish and not start strong but end weakly. If the tasks I promise to do for others are halfway done and I don't do the rest, then I can't justify this to others. It lacks integrity. If you have such thoughts in your mind and cannot let go of your pride, you can go ahead and do tasks for others. And when you're done, see what you have gained, and whether keeping your word and having this kind of integrity really holds any value. Isn't it delaying an important thing? If it can delay you from performing your duties and affect you in gaining the truth, then it is equivalent to risking your life, isn't it? If you consider these statements and requirements on moral conduct to be more important than fulfilling your duty as a created being and pursuing the truth, then you cannot free yourself from being held captive and bound by these statements. If you can discern them and see their true essence clearly, decide to forsake them and not live by these things, then you have hope of breaking free from being held captive and bound by these statements of moral conduct. You also have hope of fulfilling your duty as a created being and gaining the truth. After fellowshipping so much, do you now have a little discernment regarding the statement and standard of judging a person's morality? Do your best to faithfully handle whatever other people have entrusted to you. So, to sum up, from how many aspects should we discern whether this sentence is right or wrong? Firstly, it is clear that this statement does not conform to the truth or to the words of God, and it is not a truth principle that people should abide by. How should you deal with this matter then? No matter who entrusts you with a task, you have the right to refuse and say, "I don't want to help you. I am not obligated to be faithful to you." If you accepted their entrustment at the time, but now that you understand the matter, you don't want to help and feel that there is no need or obligation, then the matter ends there. Is this a principle of practice? You can say no and refuse. Secondly, what is wrong in the statement, "Do your best to faithfully handle whatever other people have entrusted to you"? If someone entrusts you with a simple task that is conveniently done, it is just a normal thing in interacting and dealing between people. It can't be said whether you're faithful or whether you have high moral character. It cannot be used as a standard to measure a person's morality. Does helping someone with a task that requires very slight effort indicate that a person is moral and has credibility? Not necessarily, as that person may have done many bad things behind the scenes. If they have done many bad things, but they have done something to help others with very slight effort, is this considered high moral character?
No, it's not.
Therefore, this example overturns the statement, "Do your best to faithfully handle whatever other people have entrusted to you." It is not correct and cannot be used as a standard to measure a person's moral character. This is the way to deal with some ordinary things. So, how should you deal with some special matters? If someone entrusts you with a special, important task that exceeds your capabilities, and you find it exhausting and strenuous, and that you're unable to do it, you can refuse without feeling bad. Additionally, if someone entrusts you to do something that is unreasonable, illegal, or harmful to the interests of others, you especially should not do it for them. So, when someone entrusts you with a task, what is the main thing you need to discern? For one thing, you need to discern whether the entrusted task is your responsibility or obligation, and whether you should accept it. For another, after accepting it, whether you do it or not, and whether you handle it well or poorly, does it involve faithfulness and a person's morality? This is the focus of discernment. Another aspect to discern is the nature of the entrusted task, whether it is reasonable, legal, positive, or negative. It is through these three aspects that you discern it. Now, consider and summarize what was just fellowshipped and discuss your opinions and views.
Regarding the moral statement, do your best to faithfully handle whatever other people have entrusted to you. Firstly, people are not obligated to do things for others. They can refuse. This is everyone's right. Secondly, even if they accept a task entrusted by others, whether they do it or not, and whether they do it well or badly, does not involve their morality, and this cannot be used as a standard for measuring a person's moral character. Furthermore, if the task entrusted to someone is illegal and a crime, they really should not carry it out. If they do, it is a crime, and they will face punishment. Through these points, we can indeed overturn the viewpoint of, do your best to faithfully handle whatever other people have entrusted to you.
The most crucial point is that this statement is wrong. Where is it wrong? First, the principle it imposes for treating and handling such matters is wrong. Additionally, using this statement to judge a person's moral character is also wrong. Moreover, using this statement to measure a person's moral character, to bind and control them, to use them to do things, and to make them pay their time, energy, and price in performing responsibilities that they should not have to bear or are unwilling to bear, is a kind of hijacking, and it's also wrong. These few wrongs are enough to overturn the value and correctness of the statement, "Do your best to faithfully handle whatever other people have entrusted to you." Let's summarize briefly. First of all, the statement, "Do your best to faithfully handle whatever other people have entrusted to you," tells people how to handle tasks entrusted to them. It implies that when someone entrusts you with a task, no matter if it's reasonable or not, good or bad, or positive or negative, as long as the task is entrusted to you, you must keep your word. You are obligated to carry out the task well and completely in order to satisfy them. Only this kind of person can have credibility. It makes people carry out the task without discernment, which is above all a wrong that goes against principles. Secondly, the standard of whether people can do their best to faithfully handle whatever other people have entrusted to them is used as a basis to measure their moral character. Isn't this standard of measurement committing another wrong? If everyone does their best to faithfully handle bad or evil tasks entrusted to them, wouldn't this society be turned upside down? Additionally, if this statement is always used as a standard to measure people's moral character, it will naturally create a social atmosphere, public opinion, and social pressure to bind and restrict people's thoughts. What consequences will this bring? Because of the existence of the statement, "Do your best to faithfully handle whatever other people have entrusted to you," and the presence of such public opinion in society, you are under social pressure and you are compelled to act in this way in such situations. The way you act is not voluntary. It is not within the range of your own capabilities, and it is not fulfilling your obligations. You are forced to do it, and it is not a demand from deep in your heart, nor a demand from normal humanity, and it isn't a demand to maintain your emotional relationships. It is caused by social pressure, which amounts to moral hijacking. If you fail to do the tasks you agreed to do for others, your parents, family, colleagues, and friends will criticize you, saying, "What do you think you are doing?" As the saying goes, do your best to faithfully handle whatever other people have entrusted to you. Since you agreed, why didn't you follow through? If you agreed, you should have done it well. After hearing this, you feel that you are in the wrong, so you obediently carry out the task. While doing it, you still don't want to. You don't have the ability, and you can't manage it, but you still have to grit your teeth and do it. In the end, your whole family helps you do it, and it takes a lot of money, energy, and suffering, and just barely gets done. The person who entrusted you is happy, but you have suffered a lot in your heart, and you are exhausted. Even though you do this with an unreconciled heart and an unwilling feeling, you won't give up, and the next time you encounter this kind of situation, you will do the same thing again. Why is it like this? Because you want self-respect, you love vanity, and at the same time, you can't bear the pressure of public opinion. Even if no one finds fault with you, you will criticize yourself, saying, "I didn't do what I agreed to do for others. What am I doing? I even despise myself. Isn't this immoral?" Even you are hijacking yourself. Has your mind already been imprisoned? In fact, that task hasn't the slightest thing to do with you. You gain no benefits or edification by doing it. It's completely fine if you don't do it, and only a few individuals will criticize you. But what difference does that make? It won't alter your destiny in the slightest. No matter what people ask of you, as long as it doesn't conform to the requirements of God, you can refuse. By dissecting the statement, "Do your best to faithfully handle whatever other people have entrusted to you," based on these 3 points, do you understand the essence of this statement? When someone entrusts you with a task, what principles should you follow? Shouldn't there be principles for carrying it out? What is the basis for this in terms of the truth? Just now, I mentioned the most important point, which is that in one's lifetime, apart from supporting parents, raising children, and fulfilling one's social responsibilities within the framework of the law, there is no obligation to accept anyone's entrustment or work for anyone, and no need to live for anyone's affairs or entrustment. The value and meaning of human life can only be found in performing the duty of a created being. Besides that, doing things for anyone hasn't the slightest bit of meaning. It is all useless work. Therefore, the statement, "Do your best to faithfully handle whatever other people have entrusted to you," is something imposed on people by people and has no connection to God. This statement is absolutely not a requirement from God to humans. It stems from others exploiting you, morally hijacking you, and controlling and binding you. It doesn't have the slightest connection to God's entrustment or performing your duty as a created being. Do you understand? In this world, in the entire universe, as a created being, apart from being faithful to God and God's entrustment, and being faithful to one's duty as a human being, there is nothing and no one worthy of your faithfulness. It is clear that do your best to faithfully handle whatever other people have entrusted to you is not a principle for conduct. It is something erroneous and that violates principles. If someone entrusts you with a task, what should you do? If the task entrusted to you is something that only requires very slight effort, where you only need to simply speak or perform a small action, and you are qualified enough, you can help out of your humanity and compassion. This is not considered wrong. This is a principle. However, if the task entrusted to you will consume a significant amount of your time and energy, or even waste a considerable portion of your time, you have the right to refuse. Even if it is your parents, you have the right to decline. There is no need to be faithful to them or accept their entrustment. This is your right. Where does this right come from? it is bestowed upon you by God. This is the second principle. The third principle is that if someone entrusts you with some task, even if it doesn't consume a significant amount of time and energy, but it can disturb or affect your performance of duty, or destroy your will to perform your duty as well as your faithfulness to God, you should also refuse it. If someone entrusts you with something that can affect your pursuit of the truth, disrupt and disturb your will to pursue the truth, and your pace in the pursuit of the truth, and make you give up halfway, then you should refuse it even more. You should refuse anything that affects your performance of duty or your pursuit of truth. This is your right. You have the right to say no. There is no need for you to invest your time and energy. You can refuse all things that hold no meaning, value, edification, help, or benefit to your performance of duty, pursuit of the truth, or your salvation. Can this be considered a principle? Yes, this is a principle. So, if you measure according to these principles, where can the entrusted tasks people should accept in their life come from?
From God.
That's right. They can only come from God. The words "from God" are relatively hollow and distant. So what should this entrustment actually be?
Performing our duty.
That's right. It means performing your duty in the church. It's impossible for God to personally say to you, "You go spread the gospel," "You go lead the church," or "You go perform text-based work." It's impossible for God to tell you personally, but God has entrusted you with your duty through the arrangement of God's house. All of the arrangements of God's house stem from God and come from God. So, do you need God to personally tell you? You have already experienced all the people, events, and things of God's sovereignty and orchestration, and you have real feelings. What you have experienced is related to God's work, the truth, and His management plan. Isn't this performing the duty of a created being? This is from the aspect of accepting entrustment. For another thing, besides what is entrusted from God, there is no other thing that people should be faithful to. Only God deserves unwavering faithfulness. People are not worthy. No one, including your ancestors, parents, or superiors, is worthy. Why? The highest truth is that it is perfectly natural and justified that created beings be faithful to the Creator. Do you need to analyze this truth? No, because everything about people comes from God. It is perfectly natural and justified that created beings be faithful to the Creator. This is a supreme truth that people should always bear in mind. The second truth that people should understand is that by being faithful to God, everything people gain from God is the truth, the life, and the way. Their gains are rich and abundant, especially plentiful and overflowing. When humans gain the truth, the life, and the way, their lives become valuable. Therefore, when you are faithful to God, your time, energy, and costs that are sacrificed will be positively rewarded, and you will never have regrets. Up to now, some people have followed God for 20 or 30 years, and some have followed God for 3 to 5 years, or for 10 years. I believe that most of them have no regrets and have made gains to some extent. For those who love the truth, the more they follow God, the more they feel that they lack too much, and that the truth is precious. Their desire to pursue the truth grows, and they feel that they accepted God too late, and that if they had accepted Him 3 to 5 years or 10 years earlier, how much truth they would have understood. Now, some people regret accepting God too late, regretting that they believed in God for several years without pursuing the truth and wasted their time, and regretting that they believed in God for several years without performing their duty well. In short, regardless of the length of time a person believes in God, they all gain something and feel that pursuing the truth is incredibly important. This is the second truth, that by being faithful to God, everything people gain from God is the truth, the way, and the life, and they can be saved, no longer living under the power of Satan. The third truth is that if people can achieve eternal faithfulness to God, what will be their ultimate destination?
To be saved and remain to enter God's kingdom.
When people follow God and are ultimately saved, the destination they get is not to be cast into perdition and destroyed, but to remain as a new human being, to be able to continue living. If people continue to live, then they have the hope of seeing God. What a blessing it is. In the matter of being faithful to God, is it enough for people to understand these 3 truths? What benefits are there if people follow others and are faithful to them? If you are faithful to others, people say that you have good morals, you have a good reputation, and you only gain this small benefit. Have you gained the truth in life? You don't gain it at all. What can any person give you when you are faithful to them? At most, you can benefit from associating with them during the rapid success in their career. That's all. What is the value of that? Isn't that hollow? Things that are unrelated to truth are useless, no matter how much you acquire. Furthermore, if you follow people and are faithful to them, there may be a consequence. You may become a victim, an offering. If the person you are faithful to does not walk the right path, what will happen if you follow them? Will you walk the right path? If you follow them, you won't walk the right path either. You will even comply with them to do evil and will go to hell to be punished. And then you are finished. If you are faithful to a person, even if you do many good deeds, you will not gain God's approval. If you are faithful to the devil kings, Satan, or antichrists, you become an accomplice and a henchman of Satan. The outcome can only be being buried alongside Satan, being an offering for Satan. Unbelievers say, being close to a king is as dangerous as lying with a tiger. No matter how faithful you are to the devil kings, in the end, once they have used you up, they will devour you and make you a victim. Your life will always be in danger. That is the fate of being faithful to the devil kings and to Satan. Devil kings and Satan will never point you to the correct direction and purpose for your life, and will not guide you on the correct path of life. You will never gain the truth or life from them. The end of your faithfulness to them is to either perish with them and be their offering, or to be entrapped, mutilated, and devoured by them. All of this is the final result of going to hell. This is an undeniable fact. Therefore, any person, no matter what a famous and eminent person or big shot they are, is not worthy of your faithfulness and sacrificing your entire life for them. They are not worthy, and they do not have the power to arrange or manipulate your destiny. Is understanding this truth principle enough to solve problems, such as following people and being faithful to people? There are 3 principles that should be followed when dealing with the tasks entrusted to you by others. And 3 principles were fellowshipped on the value and significance of people's faithfulness to God. Do you understand all of these principles clearly? In short, the purpose of dissecting the statement, "Do your best to faithfully handle whatever other people have entrusted to you," is to help you see its absurdity and falsehood clearly, so that you can let go of it. However, letting go is not enough. You must also understand and grasp the principles of practice people should have, as well as God's will in such matters. Regarding the moral statement of, "Do your best to faithfully handle whatever other people have entrusted to you," the main content is basically this. I just dissected from different aspects and viewpoints, and then specifically fellowshipped on the principles of practice that God has revealed to people, what God's will is, and what truths people should understand. After understanding these points, people should fundamentally grasp how to discern the moral statement of, "Do your best to faithfully handle whatever other people have entrusted to you." Analyzing this topic of, "Do your best to faithfully handle whatever other people have entrusted to you," is actually quite simple, and people can easily discern and understand it. This phrase is also a statement put forward by moralists to paralyze people, confuse people's thoughts, and disrupt normal thinking, and is not based on a normal human conscience, reason, or normal human needs. Such ideas are concocted by so-called thinkers and moralists, passed off as virtuous. Not only are they baseless and nonsensical, but they are also immoral. Why is it considered immoral? Because it does not stem from the needs of normal humanity. It cannot be achieved in the scope of human capabilities, and it is not an obligation or duty that humans should perform. Those so-called moralists take this phrase, "Do your best to faithfully handle whatever other people have entrusted to you," as a standard for comportment that they strictly demand of people, thereby forming a kind of social atmosphere and public opinion. People are then oppressed by this public opinion, and they are forced to live this way. In this way, people's thoughts imperceptibly become bound by this kind of satanic thinking. Once a person's thoughts are bound, their actions are obviously also bound by this statement and by public opinion. What does it mean to be bound? It means that people cannot choose what they do. They cannot freely follow the desires and demands of human nature, and cannot follow the demands of their conscience and reason to do what they want to do. Instead, they are constrained and bound by a distorted thought, by a kind of ideological theory and social opinion that people cannot distinguish or break free from. People unconsciously live in this kind of social environment and atmosphere and cannot break free. If people do not understand the truth, if they can't clearly understand the fallacies and errors in these statements, and if they can't realize the harm and consequences caused by these statements binding their thoughts, they will never be able to break free from the constraints, bindings, and pressures imposed by traditional culture and social opinion. They will only be able to live by relying on these things. The reason why people live by relying on these things is that they do not know what the right path is, what the direction and purpose of their comportment are, nor the principles of how to comport themselves. They are naturally and passively confused by the various moral statements in traditional culture, misled and controlled by these erroneous theories. When people understand the truth, it becomes easy for them to discern and reject these heresies and fallacies. They are no longer bound, hijacked, or exploited by the public opinion, atmosphere, and environment in society that was created by Satan. In this way, the direction and purpose of their lives are completely transformed, and they can live and exist according to God's requirements and God's words. They are no longer confused or bound by the various satanic theories and the various fallacies of traditional culture. When people completely abandon various statements in traditional culture about moral conduct, that is the moment they completely free themselves from Satan's corruption, deception, and bondage. On this basis, when you understand the truth and when you understand the principles of practice that God requires and gives to humans, your purpose in life is thoroughly transformed and you have a new life. When you have a new life, you are a newborn human being and you are a new person. Because the thoughts stored in your mind are no longer filled with the various heresies and fallacies instilled in you by Satan, and instead, the truth has replaced these satanic things. Following that, under the guidance of God's words, the truth becomes life within people, guiding and governing how they view people and things, and comport themselves and act. They walk the right path of human life and can live in the light. Isn't this just like being reborn through God's words? Alright, let's conclude today's fellowship here.